It's an Ask LOJ edition on Locked On Jazz. What should we expect from Ace Bailey? Would the front office do it again? Lauri Markkanen, which version amongst the lead questions on a big day on Locked On Jazz? Bum 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 bum.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps, as well as on YouTube. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. And to the everydayers, you're the best. Two notes before we dive into your fabulous questions today. The first is that this is my last show till September. I'm going to take August off. My little sabbatical, Leaf to Lean, does great work. So we're going to give him the show for the month of August, and I'll come back re-energized and ready to go in September and then we'll have Eurobasket, and we'll be ready to roll, getting ready as summer for camp, and a bunch of guys will be in town. So that's the first one for you. Second one, Jazz put out a Remembering Frank Layden piece on YouTube, and it's outstanding. Craig and Thurl host it, and then they talk to Ron Boone and Daryl Griffith, and they go back through some old stories, and they find an old Holly Rowe interview with Frank. It's really super. So if you get a chance, it's on their YouTube channel. It's probably on SEG Plus as well. Go grab the Remembering Frank Layden piece. It is really, really well done. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, are we ready? Very good questions today. But we start with Ace Bailey, because that's where everybody wants to start. What are we looking for in the upcoming season from Ace, and what would you view as successful to make us believe he can be the guy? Stats, field, defense, player comp, anything really. So from a stats standpoint, I expect he'll probably not have a particularly good year. If you go back and look at some of the best offensive players to ever play the game and kind of go to them at similar stages in their career, Tracy McGrady was like a 23% three-point shooter and was like a 44% shooter, which was actually pretty good and barely played. And then Kevin Durant, who I actually think is probably the best comp to kind of the situation. Durant ended up playing 80 games and 35 minutes a night as a 19-year-old on the last Seattle Supersonic team that was not good. And while Durant won Rookie of the Year, he shot 43% and 29% from three. He averaged 20 points a game. That obviously would be a fabulous year. So the first thing I would say is I would suspect that you'll see a very low shooting percentage. And then the second thing is that Ace Bailey has to learn shot selection, having had really bad shot selection in college, and it's not going to just go away. So he's going to have to learn that, which I think will lead him to having even worse shooting percentage along in that way. I mean, if you look back at that 07-08 Seattle Supersonic team, Durant has Earl Watson plays the second most amount of minutes on that team. And then Nick Collison, then Jeff Green, then Chris Wilcox, Kurt Thomas, Damian Wilkins. That's a bad team. And that's kind of what we are. They went 20-62 under PJ Carlesimo. I suspect we're similar. Now we have Lowry, which will relieve some of that burden. But Seattle really just threw Durant out there. And that's Oklahoma City now, which seems to be the model. So we may do the same with Ace Bailey. We may just throw him out there for 30 minutes a night and make him survive. So then the second one I would say is I do think flashes matter. And periods of time, if he's going to be the guy, periods of time in which he dominates. Can he dominate for a few plays? Then can he dominate for a few minutes? Then does he ever have a dominant quarter? Does he ever have a dominant half? Those would be the things I think you're looking for in that. And the thing that jumped out the most in his summer league play was the way he literally just had such incredible effort the whole time. So, and I don't know how he's going to manage an NBA season, but can he play with that same zest and that effort and that tenacity on both sides of the ball? Because I thought that was where he jumped out and his just ability to do things. I think the flashes and effort would be my first two, which is not a great one. You'd rather have me tell you, there is a chance he goes and averages 20 points a game. Like we have to score. We're going to score 100 points a night, and someone has to average them. I mean, if you suddenly start down our 10-man roster and start to try to allocate the points, and you start with Lauri at 25, and now you try to get the next 75 done, and you give Keyonte 18, well, Ace Bailey may get there very quickly to be at 17 or 18 points a game because somebody has to score them. So that would be it. I would suspect he shoots about 40%. I'm going to guess he shoots about 32% from three, is wildly inefficient, scores a lot of points, and has a lot of flashes. And that would answer, since we didn't see much of Ace, what do you expect his rookie season and what do you think success looks like for him? I think I answered that. How confident are you that the Jazz can keep Ace Bailey around past his rookie contract? So I understand that Jazz fans, with what's happened in our history, we are very insecure about this. I would just say it's not like Ace Bailey is not coming to Utah deciding I'm only going to be here for X amount of years. And if there's anything about Ace Bailey that jumped out in his short time in Summer League, if you're around him, it's just kind of how gregarious and happy he is. It's not who he seems to be at all. So, there might be people in his camp that think like, okay, well, we'll get out of Utah and then we'll get our big deal somewhere else. But I can promise you that there's nobody there's nothing about Ace Bailey. It's pre-decided what's going to happen here. So it has to do with what his experience is here, how much he likes it, how much he enjoys it, how he's treated, how he succeeds, but it is not pre-decided in any way, shape, or form at this point. If the Jazz front office knew this is where they'd be 3.5 years later after trading Rudy and Donovan, do you think they'd do things the same way? Super interesting question. I wonder two things. We got kind of caught in the middle in the first 2 years. It's harder to unload an entire roster than you would think. So the kind of question goes back to the Russell Westbrook trade that we didn't make, of whether we should have made that in the offseason and unloaded Mike and Boyan and a bunch of players at that point. So you should really have cleared the entire roster, right? They traded Royce, and then they traded Donovan, and they traded Rudy. And then it took them a while. They did Boyan, and then I think he requested that. And then they got Mike done after that, midway through the season. And so it took a little while to get everything done. Would they, in retrospect, have done that faster? Okay, that would be question one. And then obviously Lauri was way better than anyone expected, and we were better than anyone expected. And Will had everyone playing really, really well. And so you guys got caught, and then we had that end of the season draft positioning. And then that leads to the second question, is like the second season, do you wish you had done this early, where you had unloaded, you acquired John Collins and maybe you didn't need to, and then you unload some of those pieces like you did this offseason to get into that, kind of clear your direction. So if we had done those two things differently, which I think are the two things you could have done differently, I don't know that we're actually in a totally different situation. The first, you would have less, we'd be less good. And then the question is whether we would have gotten, far better draft picks is really what you're saying. And so if we look back in the 2003 draft, where we end up with Taylor Hendricks, Keyonte George, and it's our pick that gets us Taylor Hendricks. If we had cleared the deck faster and drafted somewhere in there where we had Scoot Henderson, Amon Thompson, Asur Thompson, Anthony Black, Bilal Coulibaly, or Jarice Walker, is that different? I mean, obviously you got Victor. That's the Victor draft, but so you don't win the lottery. And you're having either Brandon Miller, Scoot Henderson, Amon Thompson, Asur Thompson, Anthony Black, Bilal Coulibaly, Jarice Walker, and Taylor Hendricks. But you've cleared the deck. You've cleared the deck. You don't have Colin Sexton. You don't have Jordan Clarkson. You don't have John Collins. You did all that earlier. are we that much further along? And then in the 2024 draft is the worst draft we may have ever seen. So we get Cody at 10. Had we drafted earlier, like if we have Ron Holiday, Tejan Salon, Donovan Clingan, Zach Edey, Rob Dillingham, maybe Stephen Castle, ALL-STAR, are we that different? I think we kind of go into this last draft and we end up with Ace Bailey. And I think we're in I think we could have done this in a different route. And we might have better player than Taylor Hendricks, and we might have a better player than Cody Williams. In theory, by draft position, but I don't know that we'd be in any different position than what we're in right now. This is hard. And we went down the road the day we traded Donovan and Rudy. So I'm not sure that that's it. And if the question is, if we know we're going to be 3.5 years later, would have we traded Donovan and Rudy? I think we knew where we were going to be. I think we knew this was going to be hard. What kind of year is Lauri Markkanen going to have? That seems to be the top question from a lot of people. It's next on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The Murdochs have been in Utah for like 100 years. They have, I was thinking back on this because they are doing a celebration, and there's two things that jump out to me in my now 7 years with the Murdochs. One is the first time I ever met with them, and the patriarchs were there at the table. There was grandfather and father and Blake and Ben, and I don't know if Tyson was there. I can't remember. And we were all there. The pride they had in what they were doing for be a part of the community, but also the way they treated people and what their car dealerships meant to them. And then the second one was during COVID when I was with Blake and everyone else was jacking up prices and the Murdochs didn't do it. And Blake was like, I'm just not going to the grocery store or church or somewhere in town, being part of the community and seeing people who I got an extra $2,500 from because the world was in a crisis. I'm just not going to do it. So that sums up to me my experience with the Murdochs, and feel very comfortable and very honored to have been their spokesperson for this long. So if you're looking for a car, email me at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com. And let us get you set up with a VIP meeting that you deserve by being a Locked On every dayer and get you the car that you want to get out of the market, or at least have a look at it and get it set up. So email me at dlock09@gmail.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Monarch Money. We call it your own personal CFO. I think it can be your own compliment maker. Whether you ever wish it was easier to manage your money, to know more of what's going on, and if that news might be good. You can find out you're growing your savings, that you've saved enough for your next big purchase. Monarch Money puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, which gives you visibility and control over your finances. It's more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center that can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you can also build wealth. It also can kind of separate, this is costing us this is costing us that, this is costing us that, rather than, at least that's my case, kind of guessing on all of it. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use the code LOCKEDONNBA at Monarch Money for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA for 50% off your first year. Continuing with your awesome questions. You guys always do such an amazing job on this. Do you think Lauri has his all-star year or last year? So that's interesting. Two things on last year. One is I thought the Jazz really tried to turn Lauri into this scorer, isolation, post player, got him banged up. He got bad looks out of it. And he didn't really get to play off ball like he did with Mike Conley and do all of that, those aspects of things that are his strength. We didn't get him in transition nearly as much. And then Will talked a lot about how much we were asking Lauri to sacrifice, which I think was that we were getting John Collins at the 4 more and then playing Lauri at the 3. And also just Lauri wasn't getting some of the looks because John Collins was getting more. So there's two things. I don't think we're asking Lauri to sacrifice that same way because there's not John Collins around. So that's the positive. The negative is that Lauri really did benefit from having Mike Conley, right? Like, there's something to that. In Lauri's first year with us, when he was so great, is that Mike Conley was the point guard getting him the ball. And since then, we really haven't had a particularly good point guard getting him the ball. That post All-Star break, if you go to pre-All-Star break with Mike Conley, Lauri shoots 51% from the floor, 41% from three, and 88% from the free throw line. In the second half of that season, he shoots 45%. He only plays 12 games, but 45, he does average 29 points doing this, 45 points and 32% three-point shooting. That's suddenly the roster's been cleared and he has to make more plays than he had before, and his efficiency drops, his points per game increase, and he becomes he's able to do more. And then the last 2 years, his efficiency, the middle year, his efficiency was kind of fine. And last year it dropped to very similar to that second half of that season. So I think he'll have big numbers. I don't know are we still going to try to pound him into an isolation one-on-one player that just seems like a round peg into a square hole? Or it's a square, whichever does. I don't know if it matters. But we don't have a lot of other scoring options. So when a play gets late into a possession, I think it is going to have to be Lauri ISO, and he's just not very good at that. And I do think he's really hurt by having a lack of a point guard. So Lauri is a player that plays off of people and doesn't create himself. And so his teammates are going to dictate a little bit of what kind of season he has. What is your prediction on Lauri's future of the Jazz? Will it be around when they're finally competitive? Yes, I am certain that Lauri, I feel very comfortable that Lauri will be on this roster when the Jazz play their next playoff game. I think, one, the salary floor is real. You got to pay somebody. Two, he's on board and understands what's going on. Three, he's awesome, like as a human and as a player. And you've got to have somebody on your roster that's pretty good so that as you begin to build this thing up, if Ace Bailey hits and our next guy hits, then when you're starting to bring people in, there's some foundational pieces. And so he's that piece. So yes, I believe Lauri will be on the roster. Interesting question here. If it's no longer needed to have a top 10, a top 20, a top 50 player to win a ring, doesn't the value of players 11 through 50 drop? Teams can't afford that a max guy that isn't good enough to be top 10. But so you're going to pay max contracts to players that are not top 10. That's just the reality of the game, because every team's going to maxing somebody out. There are going to be 30 max players. But this is an interesting question of like, how does used to pay for your big three? And if our belief now is that you're going to need a top 10 player like Jalen and Tyrese Halliburton and Donovan, maybe, and Shea and and Anthony Edwards, that you are then, the importance is depth after that, and having players who can play minutes. Maybe you're right. Maybe the 40th best player in the league gets a little less money than he used to get. And maybe even the 25th, and not everyone maxes somebody out, gets a little less because you're trying to build with your depth. It's an interesting thought of whether we start seeing salaries slotted differently than what we've seen before. I have not thought about that. That one's good. I love this question. If you were to buy a jersey of one of our young guys, whose jersey would it be? So the obvious answer is Ace, because he's just got such talent. He's got this kind of aura to him. I think people are going to really like Walter Clayton Jr. I think he's a kind of a fighter and a winner. And I think you're going to see him. He's going to do things you like in battle, and you'll feel good wearing his jersey. Taylor's delightful. We just don't know him very well yet, and he's quiet. Isaiah Collier's got a pizzazz to him if you're going to buy a jersey there. Cody, you could jump on it now and you're kind of ahead of the game. Like, I had my Cody Williams jersey back when. I think people are going to buy Ace. Bryce Sensabaugh, dead-eye shooter. I'm a diehard. I got Bryce. Ace is your best long-term bet to have not have to buy another jersey. That's what I would tell you on that. Is one of the biggest advantages to a rookie is the controlled, if one of the biggest advantages to a rookie is cost-controlled contract, when will the league make the shift value older rookies more? Wouldn't it be more valuable to have a rookie come in? And I cut off the question, but the concept of this question is that if your older rookies are more ready to play. Somewhat true, somewhat not true. So I think the premise sounds right. I'm not sure that's totally true over the years. I think later draft picks sometimes are older are better, and they can perform. There's also a limit to what they usually, who that player is, because it's a later draft pick and because they're older and they're not developing as much. I actually don't think the league's wrong on this issue. Like, I know it's like, for whatever reason, it's gotten people's, and like Craig, I know, is always bothered by it. Like, oh, why don't, he's just not too old. Like, there is something that, like, Ace Bailey's 19 and going to develop. And there is something that the best players and the youngest players are ready to play, and they play. The Thompson kids are pretty ready to play when they were 18, 19. The older players usually do not develop as much, and many of them don't pan out, actually. We kind of hear the ones that do. So I think the premise of the question, while a popular opinion, may not be totally accurate. Having rookies that can contribute early under cost control will be more important than ever before, and I think will be vital to have the Christian Brown types in Denver who are able to play 25, 30 minutes early on a rookie contract, and that will help you settle your entire salary cap situation. 100%. I agree with you on that. Will Hardy's coaching comes under question next on Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you in part by Game Time. Did you use Game Time to go to the Lumineers last night? We did. I didn't go. The kids did. Whatever it is, whether it's concert tickets that go on sale, whether you see some of you're dying to see, live music should be about making memories, and Game Time is here for you. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes the concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with the killer last-minute deals. Jake Scott tonight? Maybe. Last-minute deal. Tired of endless scrolling, trying to find the best deals? Game Time's zone deals pick up the seats in your section for you. Ever wonder what your view will actually look like? The app shows it to you. Panoramic seat view. Game Time, the price you see is the price you get. No hidden fees. So, worried about what happens if the plans change? Game Time guaranteed has your back with cancellation protection and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets. Lowest price. Guaranteed. Ask LOJ edition has been nails today. You guys are always great at this, and some good high-level questions of people who clearly listen to the show. I always appreciate that. Does Will Hardy's system have a lot of ISO ball? Seems like guys play a lot of hero ball, take a lot of bad shots from that. Does the data back that up? So we increased the amount of isolation that we played midway through last year. Will kind of integrated it into the offense on a certain call and play where if things happened and things developed in a certain way, there was a call that was made that was like, yeah, go play isolation. I think this was a little bit of a development thing. Like, let's see who's got what here and who's able to play isolation. Overall, it actually was really successful early. And then my memory is it got less successful as time went on for the season. For overall, per 100 possessions, the Jazz rank 18th in isolation, amount of isolation possessions. So we don't run more isolation than anyone else. And actually, we're 23rd in the league in isolation per chance. So we're actually not, we're not bad at it or really good at it. In Will Hardy's 3 years as our head coach, which is right, isn't that right? We rank overall, the Clippers are in Dallas, we're number 1 and 2 in the league. We rank 19th. We're right kind of there in what we do in isolation. We're 19th in efficiency as well, I think, is what I remember. Actually, I take that back. We are 20th in efficiency. Is that right? I think that's right. Dallas and Boston are the best. No, we're 19th. So we're 19th overall. So no, we don't run a lot of isolation. we're not particularly bad at it, actually. We did have a stretch last year where Will very consciously, post All-Star break is my memory. He tried to integrate it into the offense a little bit more to try to get guys to be willing to do it. We were having, I think, a little bit of a problem where we were overpassing late into possessions, if I remember correctly. And he kind of wanted to say, hey, you know what? Like, let's, if you have a matchup, or we call it from there was a play call. I can't remember what the call was. There was some call, and it would come from the bench. You'd hear it, and that player was kind of a signal to that player that, like, if you want to go, you should go. But by the way, I looked it up as we were just talking right now to back this up, is that I looked at post All-Star break or post February 15th, and guess what? We were 19th in the league in the amount of isolations that we played. So literally we did not change anything. We were 26th in the league in efficiency, as it didn't work as well as the time went on. What evidence is there that Will Hardy is actually a good head coach when the Jazz are ready to win? It seems like they extended coach based on speculation, the absence of data. I mean, the data of wins and losses, there's definitely an absence. And the defensive numbers have not been good. I'd only say there's one thing that Will Hardy, and I would guess he would agree with, it has to be fixed, and that we're on the wrong side of the turnover game. We lead the league in turnovers, and we're last in the league in forcing turnovers, when that seems to be a rising thing in the league. But if you look at Will Hardy's coaching, you've seen incredible communication skills with his players. So that's probably one, and probably the most important skill. You've seen incredible EQ, emotional intelligence, or that around how to manage a team, get through a season, navigate. These have been really hard seasons. He's done an incredible job of that. I think you've seen very creative play calling. And then the one I jump out to is, in each of the last 3 years, the team's kind of come out playing with one style, and he's able to adapt, or particularly offensively, early in that season to change what we're doing and see what's working, what's not. And we get much better, much better offensively almost immediately in each of the last few seasons, which are really good signs. So I think when you think about basketball IQ, you think about emotional intelligence involving interactions with his players and his team and navigating a season, communication with his players. I think he gets really high regards in all of those things. And then, he hasn't really had a roster. It's not like we've underperformed from a wins-loss standpoint. That's the roster he's been given. So it's hard to give him that blame. And then statistically, the only thing I would say is the turnover issue is that we just turn it over too much, which is a young team, but we also don't force any turnovers. So I think you'll see us try to adjust and get that on that. Listener question: my biggest concern with Isaiah Collier is he has not improved. Worst turnovers in the league. The only point guard who shot under 50% from the line. If he has the ability, he should be able to improve. I'm confused. Wait, when was he supposed to? He was a rookie last year, right? Oh, we're not using 5 games of Summer League as a value judgment of whether he's improved or not. Please, no. Summer League's not real. Summer League's the greatest marketing thing in the world. But this is unfair. This is unfair. We can't be judging him on 6 Summer League games and also expect him to suddenly shoot dramatically differently. We'll see if he improves during the season, and some of these improvements are going to take years. But that's not fair at all. Regarding Keyonte, is there a history of a player going from 0 percentile defensively to becoming league average? That's a great question, and I don't have any idea, and I don't know how we would know that. We'd have to go through Taylor Schnarr's dunks and threes, defensive ratings for an extended period of time, and try to figure out. I don't know. I think you just look at his body and his skill set and say he should be an average defense player. That's the way I look at it. What are the Jazz plans with the 2 vets we recently acquired? How much in payroll do we need to get to the minimum floor? The 2 vets we recently acquired would be Kyle Anderson and whom? Is that who it is? Did I miss somebody? Well, Kevin Love, I think we're going to release. Who else did we acquire? Yusuf Nurkic? Yusuf Nurkic could play. I don't know what position they think Kyle Filipowski is. So Yusuf Nurkic could play. And I think Kyle Anderson is going to be our Patty Mills this year. Incredibly valuable, insightful, thoughtful, smart. And when my conversation yesterday, when the point guards go awry, I think he comes in to run the team well. Final one of the day, best guess as to who is a bottom 5 team and a top 5 team next year in the NBA. Do I think the Indiana-Boston interviews? Yes. So the number 1 team in the NBA next year is Oklahoma City. The number 2 team in the NBA next year is Denver. The number 3 team in the NBA next year is Minnesota. The number 4 team in the NBA next year is the Rockets. The number 5 team in the NBA next year might be the Clippers. They might all be West Coast teams. Probably Cleveland deserves to be in that group, considering they won 60 games last year, brought back basically the team, brought Lonzo Ball. But yeah, they all might be West. The bottom, Jazz, Washington, Charlotte. I don't think the bottom's changing at all. Brooklyn. Oh, I think the Pelicans. But Pelicans could be awful. Yeah, I go with that. Pelicans, I mean, if Zion plays, they're good, but like Jordan Poole is not good. And I don't think Sadiq Bey does anything for you. So yeah, I think the bottom 4 are at least the same as a year ago. That is Locked On Jazz. Leaf Tulane takes you for the next month. I will see you in September. You're the best. I will miss you. You are awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of Locked On Jazz, for making the Locked On Podcast Network what it is. I honestly have like a little bit of me that misses you and will miss talking to you and being a part of it. So sorry. But schedule will come out, so I might stop by and do a little quick thing about the schedule or something of that nature. You never know. I might pop in. Have a great one. Thanks so much. You guys are the best. It is Locked On Jazz. Now we send you the first ever national 24/7 NBA channel, Locked On NBA. Or check out Locked On NBA nightly with Locked On NBA.